Before we begin, thank you for spending part of your day with me. Whether you're listening from home, work, while traveling, or relaxing before bed, I'm truly grateful you're here. Tonight's story is filled with heartbreak, family, unforgettable surprises, and a second chance that no one saw coming. Please like, share, and subscribe. And comment below where you're watching from so I can see just how far across the world this story has reached. Now let's begin today's unforgettable story. The Belamonte estate had never looked more magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung from ancient stone archways, catching the golden Italian sunlight and scattering it like diamonds across the white marble floors. 10,000 white roses had been flown in from the Netherlands, arranged in cascading towers that lined the private airstrip, the grand entrance, and every surface of the centuries-old chapel where generations of powerful families had sealed their alliances in blood and marriage. Rolls-Royces stretched for nearly a kilometer down the Cypress Line drive. Politicians adjusted their silk ties. Billionaires checked their watches. The heads of 7 Mafia families stood in careful clusters, their bodyguards forming a subtle perimeter that spoke of old grudges held in temporary truce. Everyone waited for the ceremony to begin. Then, a wedding coordinator, her face pale beneath her professional composure, rushed toward the groom. "Signor Castiglione, there's another guest arriving." Valerio Castiglione barely looked up from adjusting his cufflinks. At 41, he commanded attention without effort. 6 feet 4 inches of tailored black Armani, jet black hair slicked back with precision, steel-gray eyes that had made men confess their sins without a single word being spoken. The Italian script tattooed on his neck, visible just above his pristine white collar, caught the light. La famiglia prima di tutto. Family above everything. "Handle it," he said dismissively, until the unmistakable roar of a private jet echoed overhead. Guests turned toward the nearby airstrip, conversations dying mid-sentence. A sleek Gulfstream G700, the kind that cost €70 million and announced its owner's power before they ever stepped foot on the ground, touched down with elegant precision. The cabin door opened. Damiano Rinaldi emerged first. The world-famous CEO of Rinaldi Industries, whose face graced the covers of Forbes and Financial Times, whose handshake could make or break stock markets. He was tall, distinguished, salt and pepper hair perfectly groomed, his navy suit worth more than most men's annual salaries. But it wasn't Damiano who made Valerio's blood turn to ice. It was the woman who appeared behind him, Alessia. She wore a cream silk dress that moved like water around her elegant frame. Her dark chocolate-brown hair cascaded in soft waves past her shoulders. Those warm hazel eyes, eyes that had once looked at Valerio with love, then heartbreak, then nothing at all, surveyed the gathered crowd with quiet dignity. And holding each of her hands were 2 children. A boy and a girl, perhaps 6 years old. Dark hair, olive skin, gentle, curious expressions. And eyes. Gray eyes. His eyes. Valerio felt the ground shift beneath his Italian leather shoes. His tattooed knuckles, honor e cur honor and heart, went white as they gripped the stone balustrade. Because those children looked exactly like him. 7 years earlier. The signing of the divorce papers took less than 3 minutes. Valerio remembered watching Alessia's hand tremble as she held the pen. She wore a simple blue dress that day, the same blue as the morning sky over the vineyard where he'd first told her he loved her. Her hair was pulled back, and he noticed for the first time the shadows beneath her eyes, the way her collarbone seemed more prominent than before. She'd been sick for weeks. He'd assumed it was stress. "Sign it," he said, his voice carrying the cold authority that had made him the youngest Don in 3 generations. "Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." What he didn't say, "Don't make me watch you cry again." What he couldn't admit, "Every tear feels like a blade between my ribs." Alessia looked up at him, and for a moment, just a moment, he saw something flash in her hazel eyes. Secret. A hesitation. Words balanced on her lips that never found their way into the air. "Is there something you want to say?" he asked. She held his gaze for 3 heartbeats. Then she lowered her eyes and signed her name. "No," she whispered. "There's nothing left to say." He told himself it was relief he felt watching her walk out of his office. Told himself the marriage had been a mistake from the beginning. A union born from a moment of weakness, when the most feared man in southern Italy had looked at a bookstore owner's daughter and felt something he couldn't control. His mother had tried to warn him. His advisors had counseled against it. But Valerio had been arrogant enough to believe that love could exist in his world, that he could protect her from the darkness that clung to his name. He'd been wrong. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of Alessia flinching at locked doors and hushed conversations. 3 years of watching her light dim as she realized that being the wife of Valerio Castiglione meant living in a cage made of silk and secrets. When she'd asked for the divorce, he'd been furious. When she'd refused his money, his properties, his offers of continued protection, he'd been insulted. And when she'd disappeared completely, changing her phone number, leaving no forwarding address, vanishing as if their marriage had never existed, he'd been certain she would return. No one left Valerio Castiglione. Not permanently. He gave her 6 months. Then a year. When his investigators finally tracked her to a small apartment in Milan, working as a junior editor at a publishing house, he'd felt a grim satisfaction. She'll realize her mistake, he told himself. She'll come back when she understands what she gave up. He never came back. And eventually Valerio Castiglione stopped waiting. Present. Who authorized that jet to land? Valerio's voice cut through the whispered chaos like a blade. His security chief Marco was already on his radio, barking orders that came too late to matter. Sir, the flight plan was filed under Rinaldi Industries. We had no reason to. I don't want reasons. I want answers. Tommaso Bellandi, Valerio's right-hand man for over 15 years, appeared at his shoulder. The scar above his eyebrow, a souvenir from a negotiation that had gone badly in '09, seemed to deepen as he frowned. I warned you, he said quietly, his voice pitched for Valerio's ears alone. Sending that invitation was a mistake. The invitation was a courtesy. The invitation was pride. And now, Tommaso's dark eyes tracked the small procession making their way from the airstrip. Damiano Rinaldi walked with the easy confidence of a man who had nothing to prove. Alessia moved with a grace that 7 years hadn't diminished. And the children? Those children, Tommaso said. Valerio, look at them. I see them. Do you really? Valerio's jaw tightened. The crowned Roman lion on his right forearm seemed to pulse with his accelerating heartbeat as he pushed up his sleeves, a habit he'd never been able to break when agitated. It's not possible. The math says otherwise. She would have told me. Tommaso's silence was more eloquent than any response. Across the estate, guests parted like water before Alessia's approach. 7 years ago, they had looked at her with barely concealed condescension. The nobody who had somehow captured the Don's attention, the unsuitable wife who would inevitably be discarded. Now they stared with naked curiosity, with reassessment, with the particular hunger of people who sensed a shift in power they didn't yet understand. Bianca Vescari emerged from the bridal suite, her blonde hair perfectly arranged beneath a cathedral-length veil, her designer gown worth more than some families earned in a decade. She was 30 years old, beautiful in the polished way of women who had been beautiful their entire lives, and she had spent 18 months positioning herself as the perfect wife for Italy's most eligible widower. Except Valerio wasn't a widower. He was a divorced man. And his ex-wife had just arrived at their wedding with a billionaire and 2 children who looked exactly like him. Valerio. Bianca's voice carried a sharp edge beneath its cultured tones. What is the meaning of this? I don't know. The admission cost him more than she would ever understand. But I intend to find out. Alessia had imagined this moment 1,000 times. In the sleepless nights after leaving, when Luca and Lucia were newborns and she'd nursed them while crying silently so as not to wake them. In the exhausting years that followed, when she'd worked 2 jobs and taken night classes and built a life from nothing. In the quiet evenings when her children asked about their father and she'd had to find words that were honest without being destructive. Your father is a complicated man. He lives far away. Someday when you're older I'll tell you everything. She'd imagined his face when he learned the truth. Imagined rage, denial, accusations. She'd prepared speeches, defenses, explanations that she'd rehearsed until they felt worn smooth like river stones. What she hadn't imagined was the wedding invitation. It had arrived 3 weeks ago, delivered by private courier to her office at Rinaldi Publishing, the company she'd helped build from a struggling imprint into one of Italy's most respected literary houses. The envelope was cream-colored, heavy with expensive paper, embossed with the Castiglione family crest. Valerio Castiglione and Bianca Vescari request the honor of your presence. She'd stared at it for a full hour before Damiano had found her. That bastard, he'd said, which was remarkable coming from a man who famously never swore. He's trying to hurt you. He's trying to show me what I lost. What you escaped. There's a difference. Damiano had been her mentor for 5 years. He'd given her a chance when no one else would, had recognized her talent and her drive and her desperate need to become something more than the woman who had once been Valerio Castiglione's wife. He'd watched her build a career, raise 2 children, and transform herself from a victim into a survivor into something approaching triumphant. Don't go, he'd advised. But Alessia had looked at that invitation with its elegant calligraphy and its unmistakable subtext. I'm moving on, I'm thriving, you're nothing. And she'd felt something shift in her chest. Not anger. Not exactly. Certainty. I have to, she'd said. Not for him. For me. For closure. And because. She'd hesitated. The twins are almost 7. They're starting to ask questions I can't answer. Sooner or later they'll find out who their father is. I'd rather control how that happens than let it destroy them. So here she was. Standing on the grounds of the most extravagant wedding she'd ever seen, her children's small hands warm in her own, watching 7 years of carefully constructed walls begin to crumble around her. Mama. Lucia tugged at her hand. Why is everyone looking at us? Because we just arrived in a very fancy airplane, Tesoro. It's not polite to stare, but sometimes people forget their manners. Is the wedding man watching too? Alessia didn't need to follow her daughter's gaze to know where Valerio was standing. She could feel his attention like heat from a fire. Intense, consuming, impossible to ignore. Yes, baby. He's watching too. He looks angry. He looks surprised. Sometimes they look the same. Luca, ever the protective older twin, by 12 minutes, a fact he mentioned at least once a day, moved slightly in front of his sister. Should we go? I don't think we should be here if people are angry. We were invited, Alessia said gently. We're exactly where we're supposed to be. Damiano placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. I can have the jet ready in 5 minutes. Just say the word. No. She squared her shoulders. I didn't come this far to run. They reached the main terrace, where Valerio waited like a statue carved from Italian marble and barely controlled fury. His gray eyes tracked from Alessia to the children to Damiano and back again, cataloging, calculating, struggling to process what he was seeing. Alessia. His voice was rough. I didn't think you'd come. Your invitation made it clear my presence was expected. The invitation was... He stopped. Started again. Why did you bring them? Them. She kept her voice deliberately mild. You'll have to be more specific. His gaze dropped to the twins and she watched his face cycle through expressions she'd never seen during their marriage. Confusion, recognition, desperate denial, and finally something that looked almost like hope. How old are they? 6. Almost 7. She could see him doing the math. See the exact moment it landed. That's not possible. And yet here they are. You were... His hands clenched, the honor et coeur tattoos stark against his whitening knuckles. When you signed the papers. 8 weeks pregnant. Yes. And you didn't tell me? The accusation hit like a slap, but Alessia had 7 years of practice at maintaining her composure. She'd survived labor alone, survived sleepless nights and sick children and financial terror. She'd survived the moment when Lucia had asked why she didn't have a papa like other kids, and the moment when Luca had come home from school crying because a classmate had called him a bastard. She could survive Valerio's indignation. This isn't the place for this conversation. The hell it isn't. Valerio. She said his name the way she used to, with a particular emphasis that could cut through his rage like nothing else. Your bride is watching. Your guests are watching. Whatever you're feeling right now, you're going to have to feel it later. Because I refuse to let our children's first meeting with their father be a scene at his wedding to another woman. The words hit him like bullets, each one landing with visible impact. Our children. Their father. His wedding to another woman. For perhaps the first time in his life, Valerio Castiglione appeared completely at a loss for words. Damiano arranged for us to stay at a hotel nearby, Alessia continued, her voice calm even as her heart hammered against her ribs. After your ceremony, after your reception, after you've done whatever it is you need to do here, we can talk. But right now, I believe you have a wedding to attend to. She began to turn away. Wait. His hand caught her arm, not roughly, but with the same inevitability that had characterized everything about their relationship. Even his gentleness felt like a command. I didn't know. His voice cracked on the last word. You have to believe me, I didn't know. I know you didn't. If I had. What? She turned to face him fully, and for a moment the masks dropped for both of them. What would you have done, Valerio? Refused the divorce? Kept me trapped in a marriage where I was slowly disappearing? Let me raise our children in a world where their father's business partners disappeared when they asked the wrong questions. I would never have let you go. That, she said softly, is exactly what I was afraid of. Before he could respond, Lucia tugged at her hand again. Mama? Can we see the flowers? There are so many flowers. And despite everything, despite 7 years of secrets and the bomb she just detonated in the middle of the most important wedding in Italy, Alessia felt her heart soften at her daughter's simple request. We can look at them from a distance, Tesoro. We don't want to disturb the bride's special day. Valerio watched them walk away. Alessia's straight back, Damiano's protective presence, and his children, chattering about roses as if they hadn't just overturned his entire understanding of his life. Valerio. Bianca's voice again sharper now. The ceremony is supposed to begin in 15 minutes. Whatever this is. I know. Do you? Because your ex-wife just arrived with 2 children who look exactly like you, and I need you to tell me what's happening. He turned to look at her. Really look at her for the first time since the jet had landed. Bianca Vescari was beautiful, accomplished, connected to 3 families who could strengthen his position considerably. She was exactly the kind of wife a man in his position should have. And looking at her now, he felt nothing. I need to speak with my mother, he said. Immediately. Luciana Castiglione was 70 years old and had been the matriarch of one of Italy's most powerful families for over 4 decades. She had buried a husband, survived 2 assassination attempts, and navigated political waters that would have drowned lesser women. Nothing had prepared her for her son's face when he walked into her private suite. Tesoro mio. She rose from her chair, silver hair gleaming in the afternoon light. What's wrong? Did you know? Know what? About Alessia. About, he couldn't say it. Couldn't make the words real. About the children? Luciana's voice was gentle. No, my love. I didn't know. But I suspected. Suspected. A mother knows when something is wrong. Alessia was ill for weeks before the divorce. She was pale, exhausted, emotional. When she refused everything in the settlement, every property, every asset, every cent, I knew there had to be a reason. A woman doesn't walk away from security unless she's protecting something more important. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. You were so certain she would return. So convinced that she would realize her mistake and come back to you. I thought, she sighed. I thought you would find out eventually. I never imagined she would stay hidden for so long. Valerio sank into a chair, his head in his hands. The crowned lion on his forearm seemed to mock him. A symbol of strength and protection, and he hadn't protected anyone. They have my eyes, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The boy and the girl. They look exactly like me. I saw. 6 years. Almost 7. They've been alive for almost 7 years and I didn't know they existed. And now you do. Luciana crossed to him, placed a weathered hand on his shoulder. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. Yes, you do. You've always known. From the moment Alessia walked into your life, you knew. I'm supposed to be getting married in 10 minutes. Are you? Her voice carried a weight of meaning. Or are you supposed to be becoming a father? Valerio looked up at his mother. The woman who had shaped him, guided him, challenged him for 41 years. What do you expect me to do? Call off the wedding? Tell Bianca and her family and every powerful person in Italy that I've changed my mind because my ex-wife showed up with a surprise. I expect you to do what you've always done, Tesoro. I expect you to protect this family. The question is, which family are you protecting? Meanwhile, in the rose garden, Alessia watched her children explore the elaborate floral displays with a mixture of pride and terror. They were so small still, so innocent. They knew nothing of the world their father inhabited, the power he wielded, the enemies he had accumulated. She had worked so hard to protect them from all of it. "You're doing that thing," Damiano said quietly, appearing at her side with 2 glasses of champagne. "That thing where you catastrophize 17 steps ahead. Am I that obvious? Only to someone who's known you for 5 years." He handed her a glass. "Drink. You need it." "I shouldn't. I need to stay sharp." "You've been sharp for 7 years. You're allowed 5 minutes of champagne." She took the glass but didn't drink. "What have I done, Damiano?" "You've given your children the truth they deserve. And you've shown that man exactly what he threw away. That's not why I came. Isn't it?" "At least partly." Alessia thought about the invitation sitting on her desk like an unexploded bomb. Thought about the 7 years of silence, of wondering, of waiting for a knock on her door that never came. "Maybe," she admitted. "Maybe a small part of me wanted him to see. Wanted him to suffer. Wanted him to know. There's a difference." "Is there?" Before she could answer, Lucia came running back, her small face lit with excitement. "Mama, Mama. There's a lady in a big white dress and she looks like a princess." Alessia's stomach dropped. "Did you talk to her?" "No, we just looked. She was talking to a man with a scary face. Not the wedding man. A different one. He had green eyes. A different man. Green eyes." Something cold slithered down Alessia's spine. "Luca? Where's your brother?" "He was right behind me." But when Alessia turned, Luca wasn't there. 3 minutes earlier. Luca Castiglione was a curious boy. His mother always said he had more questions than a library had books, and that his imagination would either make him a writer or get him into trouble. Today it seemed like it might be both. He'd spotted the butterfly, a beautiful orange and black one, the kind Mama called a painted lady, and followed it away from the rose garden without really meaning to. Through an archway. Past a group of men in black suits who didn't notice a small boy slipping through their midst. Into a quieter part of the estate, where the sounds of the wedding preparation faded to murmurs. The butterfly landed on a stone wall and Luca stopped to catch his breath. That's when he heard the voices. Must happen during the ceremony. Maximum chaos, maximum impact. And the woman? The one who arrived with Rinaldi. She's irrelevant. A distraction. Focus on the objective. Luca pressed himself against the wall, his small heart pounding. He'd heard his mother use that tone before. The serious tone, the one that meant something bad was happening. The Castiglione heir dies tonight. One way or another. Luca didn't know what heir meant, but he understood, dies. He turned to run, and came face to face with a man with cold green eyes and a smile that held no warmth. "Well," the man said softly. "What have we here?" "Luca." Alessia's voice echoed across the estate, sharp with a terror that stopped conversations and turned heads. Damiano was already on his phone, calling security, coordinating a search, but all Alessia could think about was her son's face, his gray eyes, Valerio's eyes, and all the dangers she'd spent 7 years trying to protect him from. "He can't have gone far," Damiano said, his calm tone the only thing keeping her from complete panic. "The estate is secure. There are guards everywhere. Guards who don't know who he is. Guards who might not." She couldn't finish the sentence. Lucia gripped her hand, tears streaming down her small face. "Mama, I'm sorry, I should have watched him." "It's not your fault, Tesoro." "It's not?" Alessia knelt, pulling her daughter close. "We're going to find him. I promise." "What's happened?" Valerio's voice, sharp with command. He'd appeared as if summoned by her fear, still wearing his wedding attire, his face a mask of controlled tension. Behind him, Tommaso spoke rapidly into a radio. "My son is missing." The words tore from Alessia's throat. "Our son is missing." Something shifted in Valerio's expression. A crack in the mask, a glimpse of the man she'd married before the world had twisted him into something unrecognizable. "Luca," he said. "His name is Luca." "Yes." "How long has he been gone?" 5 minutes. Maybe less." Valerio's jaw tightened. He turned to Tommaso. "Lockdown? No. No one enters or leaves this estate until my son is found." Tommaso didn't hesitate. Didn't question. Simply nodded and began issuing orders. "Sir." One of the security team approached, his face grim. "We found something. In the East Garden." Alessia's heart stopped. "What?" Valerio demanded. The guard held out a small shoe. Blue canvas with white laces. Alessia recognized it immediately. She'd bought those shoes 2 weeks ago because Luca had outgrown his old ones. "That's his," she whispered. "That's Luca's. There's more." The guard swallowed. "We found this as well." He held out a playing card. A joker with the face crossed out in red. Valerio's entire body went rigid. "What is it?" Alessia demanded. "What does that mean?" "It means," Valerio said, his voice colder than she'd ever heard it, "that Riccardo Bellaforte just made the last mistake of his life." Riccardo Bellaforte had been waiting for this moment for 15 years. 15 years since Valerio Castiglione had taken everything from him: territory, power, respect. 15 years of plotting, of patience, of watching for the perfect opportunity to strike. And now, handed to him like a gift from God himself, came the ultimate leverage. The boy sat in a chair in the abandoned wine cellar, his small hands bound with rope that was probably too tight, but Riccardo didn't particularly care about the comfort of children. His gray eyes, Castiglione eyes, there was no denying it, were wide with fear, but he wasn't crying. Brave, Riccardo thought. Like his father. "Pity. Do you know who I am?" he asked, crouching to meet the boy's eyes. "A bad man." Luca's voice trembled but didn't break. "I heard you talking. You want to hurt someone." Very observant. "Yes, I want to hurt someone. Someone who hurt me first, a long time ago. My mama says 2 wrongs don't make a right." "Your mama sounds very naive." Riccardo straightened. "But don't worry. If everyone cooperates, you'll see your mama again very soon. She'll find me." The certainty in the small voice was almost touching. "She always finds me when I get lost. I'm counting on it." The wedding was effectively over. Guests whispered in clusters, uncertain whether to leave or stay. Bianca Vescari had retreated to the bridal suite, her mother and sisters surrounding her like a protective fortress. The orchestra sat idle, their instruments silent. The 10,000 white roses seemed to mock the chaos. In Valerio's private study, a very different scene was unfolding. Bellaforte called 45 minutes ago. Tommaso spread surveillance photos across the desk. "His demands are clear: full territorial surrender of the eastern ports, transfer of shipping contracts, and public acknowledgement that you've lost the war." "And if I refuse?" Tommaso's silence was answer enough. Alessia stood by the window, Lucia pressed against her side. She'd refused to leave, refused to be shuttled to safety, refused to do anything except stay as close to the search as possible. "How did he know?" she asked. "How did he know about Luca?" "He didn't." Valerio's voice was flat. "He was planning something for the wedding. An attack, an assassination, something. Luca was in the wrong place at the wrong time. An accident. My son was kidnapped by accident." "Alessia. This is what I was afraid of." She turned, and the fury in her eyes made even Valerio step back. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. Your world, your enemies, your power games. I spent 6 years keeping them away from this, and one afternoon in your presence, and everything I built." "I know. You don't know anything. You weren't there when they took their first steps. You weren't there when Lucia had pneumonia and I sat in the hospital for 3 days praying she would survive. You weren't there for any of it, and now my son is." Her voice broke. She turned away, her shoulders shaking. Valerio moved toward her, then stopped. What right did he have to offer comfort? What right did he have to touch her, to pretend he could fix what his existence had broken? "Mama." Lucia's small voice cut through the tension. "Is Luca going to be okay?" Alessia wiped her eyes, turned to her daughter with a smile that was all the braver for being false. "Yes, tesoro. We're going to find him and bring him home. Promise." "I promise." Valerio watched this exchange. The mother reassuring the child trusting completely, and felt something crack open in his chest. Something that had been frozen for 7 years. "I will get him back." The words came out rougher than he intended. "Whatever it takes. Whatever it cost. I will bring our son home." Alessia looked at him. For a long moment she simply looked, as if weighing his words against 7 years of absence, 7 years of not knowing he was a father, 7 years of silence. "You said our son," she said finally. He is our son. They both are. I may have missed 6 years, but that doesn't change what they are. What they will always be. Blood isn't everything. No. But it's a start. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the pulse pounding in his throat, the desperation he couldn't quite hide. Let me prove it. Let me prove that I can be more than the man who failed you. And if you can't? Then I will die trying. The words hung between them, a vow, a challenge, a beginning. Tommaso cleared his throat. Sir, we have a location. Abandoned winery 12 kilometers east. Bellaforte has at least 20 men. Valerio straightened. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by the cold calculation that had made him the most feared man in southern Italy. Prepare the teams. We move in 30 minutes. Valerio. Alessia caught his arm as he turned to leave. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. He's my son. You think I'm going to sit here and wait? You have another child who needs you. Lucia needs her mother present and alive. And Luca needs both his parents fighting for him. He needs his father to bring him home. And his mother to be there when he arrives. Valerio's voice softened. Please, Alessia. Let me do this. Let me be his father, even if it's 6 years too late. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then slowly she released his arm. Bring him back. I will. And Valerio? She called after him as he reached the door. Don't die. We have too much to talk about. Despite everything, the fear, the rage, the impossible situation, a ghost of a smile crossed his features. I'll keep that in mind. The abandoned winery had been in Bellaforte's family for generations before bankruptcy and betrayal had stripped it from their control. Now it served as a base for his diminished operations. A fitting metaphor for a man who had once commanded respect and now commanded only desperate men and borrowed time. Valerio's convoy arrived without lights, without sirens, without any warning. 23 men moved through the darkness with practiced precision. Valerio led them personally, unusual for a dawn, dangerous, but he would not delegate his son's rescue to anyone. Perimeter secure. Tommaso's voice crackled through his earpiece. 2 guards at the east entrance, 3 at the west. The boy is in the wine cellar, based on thermal imaging. Casualties. Their choice, not ours. Valerio checked his weapon. A necessity he'd hoped to avoid, a reality he'd long since accepted. On my signal. The assault was swift and brutal. Bellaforte's men, while numerous, were not prepared for the full force of the Castiglione organization descending upon them. Shots fired, men fell, and Valerio moved through the chaos with single-minded purpose. The wine cellar door was reinforced, but nothing withstood the charges Tommaso had prepared. It blew inward with a concussive force that sent dust billowing through the underground space. And there, in the center of the chaos, was his son. Luca sat exactly where Bellaforte had left him, hands still bound, gray eyes huge in his small face. But he wasn't alone. Riccardo Bellaforte stood behind him, a gun pressed to the boy's temple. One more step, Bellaforte said, his voice steady despite the chaos above. And your reunion ends before it begins. Valerio stopped. His men stopped. The world stopped. Let him go, Riccardo. Or what? You'll kill me? You can't shoot me faster than I can pull this trigger. I'm not going to shoot you. Valerio let his weapon hang at his side. I'm going to give you what you want. You'll surrender? I'll give you something better than territory. He met Bellaforte's eyes, green, cold, filled with 15 years of hatred. I'll give you the truth. What truth? The truth about who really betrayed your family. About who really orchestrated your downfall. Valerio's voice dropped. It wasn't me, Riccardo. It was never me. Something flickered in Bellaforte's expression. Doubt. You're lying. You have a gun to my son's head. Why would I lie now? To save him. If I were lying, my men would have already taken the shot. Valerio gestured and slowly, so slowly, his soldiers lowered their weapons. I'm offering you the truth. The names, the evidence, the complete picture. Everything your father died without knowing. My father died because of you. Your father died because someone wanted us to destroy each other. And we almost did. We've spent 15 years bleeding each other while the real enemy watched and profited. Bellaforte's hand trembled. The gun trembled. Luca whimpered. Who? Bellaforte demanded. Let my son go and I'll tell you everything. The longest seconds of Valerio's life stretched between them. The Bellaforte lowered the gun. Later, in the car returning to the estate, Luca slept against Valerio's chest, exhausted by fear and adrenaline and the overwhelming events of the day. His small hand gripped Valerio's shirt, as if afraid to let go even in unconsciousness. Valerio couldn't stop looking at him. This was his son. His son. 6 years of life he'd missed. First words, first steps, first everything. 6 years of birthday candles and skinned knees and bedtime stories. 6 years that could never be recovered, only mourned. You're doing it again. Tommaso's voice came from the front seat. That thing where you disappear inside your own head. I'm thinking. About what? About everything I missed. Valerio's hand moved, almost involuntarily, to smooth his son's dark hair. About everything I have to make up for. You can't make up for 6 years overnight. No. But I can start. And Alessia? What about her? Tommaso glanced in the rearview mirror. You're not a stupid man, Valerio. You know what I'm asking. Valerio was silent for a long moment. The Italian cathedral tattooed on his left forearm caught the streetlights as they drove. Heritage, loyalty, responsibility. All the things he'd believed he embodied. All the things he'd failed at when it mattered most. I destroyed her once, he said finally. I won't make that mistake again. That's not what I asked. I know. He looked down at his sleeping son. But it's the only answer I have right now. At the estate, Alessia was waiting. She ran to them before the car had fully stopped, pulling Luca from Valerio's arms and holding him so tightly that the boy woke, confused and disoriented, and then, when he realized where he was, collapsing into his mother's embrace with sobs he'd been holding back for hours. Mama, I'm sorry, I should have stayed, I'm sorry. Shoo, Tesoro, you're safe now, you're safe, that's all that matters. Lucia joined them, and suddenly they were a tangle of arms and tears and whispered reassurances. Mother and children reunited. Complete. Valerio stood apart, watching. This was his family. His family. And he had no right to join them. Thank you. He looked up to find Alessia watching him over Luca's shoulder. Her eyes were red with crying, her elegant dress rumpled and stained, her careful composure utterly shattered. She had never looked more beautiful. You don't have to thank me. You saved our son's life. He wouldn't have needed saving if I hadn't. He stopped. Shook his head. It doesn't matter. What matters is he's safe. Valerio. You should take them inside. They need rest. Food. Whatever comfort you can give them. And you. I have business to finish with Bellaforte. Now. Tonight. The truth doesn't wait for convenience. He turned to leave, then hesitated. Alessia. I know this changes nothing. I know 6 years of absence can't be erased by one rescue. But I want you to know, I want you to understand. Understand what? I would burn the world to keep them safe. He met her eyes, and for the first time in 7 years she saw the man she'd fallen in love with. Not the Don, not the power broker, not the cold strategist, but the man who had once looked at her like she was everything. I would burn it all and walk through the ashes myself if it meant they would never be hurt again. And me? The question slipped out before she could stop it. You. His smile was sad, soft, utterly unlike the man he'd become. I would walk through fire for you, Alessia. I always would have. I just never learned how to say it until it was too late. He walked away into the darkness. And Alessia, holding her children in the light of the estate, felt 7 years of careful walls begin to crack. The next morning came gray and quiet. The wedding guests had departed in the night, some confused, some scandalized, all with stories they would dine out on for years. Bianca Vescari and her family had left without a word. The engagement dissolved as thoroughly as the morning mist. Luciana Castiglione found Alessia on the terrace, watching the twins play in the garden below. May I join you? Alessia nodded, and the older woman settled into the chair beside her. They're beautiful, Luciana said, watching Luca and Lucia chase each other through the roses. I see my son in them. But I also see you. The best parts of both. They're survivors. Like their mother. Like their grandmother too, I hope. Luciana's eyes crinkled with a smile. I survived marriage to a powerful man. I survived raising one. I know what it costs. Then you understand why I left. I understand why you felt you had to. That doesn't mean it didn't break my son's heart. Alessia's laugh was bitter. Valerio doesn't have a heart to break. Doesn't he? Luciana turned to face her fully. My dear, I've watched that man for 41 years. I watched him build walls around himself layer by layer, until not even I could reach him. But I also watched those walls crumble piece by piece every time you walked into a room. That was a long time ago. It was yesterday. Luciana reached out, took Alessia's hand. I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm not asking you to take him back. But I am asking you to let him try. Not for his sake, for theirs. She nodded toward the garden, where Luca had stopped running and was staring at the terrace above. Staring at Valerio, who had appeared in the doorway behind them. Father and son looked at each other across the distance. Luca raised a small hand in an uncertain wave. And Valerio, the most feared man in southern Italy, the man who had faced down rival families and assassination attempts in 15 years of warfare. Valerio waved back. Can I sit here? Alessia looked up from her coffee to find Valerio standing beside her table. He'd showered, changed into casual clothes that still somehow cost more than most people's monthly salaries. The Italian script on his neck was visible above his collar, a permanent reminder of the world he inhabited. It's your estate. That doesn't mean I have the right to intrude. She considered him for a long moment. Sit. He did, movements careful as if afraid of spooking her. Coffee. Please. She poured, and for a moment they sat in silence, two people who had once shared everything and now shared nothing but the children playing below. I spoke with Bellafor, Valerio said finally. The full story. Everything. And I was wrong. For 15 years I fought a war against a man who was as much a victim as I was. Someone else orchestrated it all, played us against each other while they grew rich and powerful on our losses. Who? It doesn't matter. They're being dealt with. Alessia knew better than to ask what dealt with meant. Is it over? The danger. For now. Bellaforte has agreed to a ceasefire. An alliance eventually if negotiations go well. Valerio's jaw tightened. But I can't promise it will never happen again. I can't promise that this world won't touch them again. All I can promise is that I will do everything in my power to protect them. And if that's not enough, then I will find a way to make it enough. He met her eyes. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. I've spoken with my lawyers. I'm creating trusts for both children. Access to education, healthcare, anything they need. But more than that. He pulled a document from his jacket. I want to legitimize them. Publicly acknowledge them as my heirs. Give them the Castiglione name with all the protection that entails. Alessia's hands trembled as she took the document. You're asking me to make them targets. I'm asking you to let me give them the best chance at a safe life. The Castiglione name is feared, yes, but it's also protected. People who would hurt them as the children of a single mother would think twice about touching the heirs of the family. And if I say no? Then I'll respect your decision. His voice was heavy. You've raised them for 6 years without me. You've made every decision, every sacrifice, every impossible choice. I have no right to demand anything. But I'm asking, I'm begging, for the chance to be their father. Not just in blood but in truth. Alessia looked at the document. Looked at the garden where Luca and Lucia had stopped playing and were watching the terrace with matching expressions of curiosity. Looked at Valerio. Why did you send me that invitation? She asked. What? The wedding invitation. After 7 years of silence. Why? Valerio was quiet for a long moment. Because I wanted you to see that I'd moved on, he said finally. Because I wanted you to regret leaving. Because, he stopped. Started again. Because I was still angry. Still hurt. Still too proud to admit that losing you was the worst mistake I ever made. And now I know that there's no moving on from you. His voice cracked. There never was. I tried, Alessia. I tried to forget you, to replace you, to become someone who didn't need you. And all I did was build a bigger cage for myself. A cage with a fiancé and a $10 million wedding. A cage nonetheless. He leaned forward and she saw desperation in his steel-gray eyes. Real, raw, undeniable. I know I can't undo the past. I know I can't be the husband I should have been or the father I should have been. But I can be better. I will be better. If you give me the chance. What exactly are you asking for? I'm asking for time. For access. For the opportunity to know my children and earn their trust. I'm not asking you to take me back. I know I haven't earned that and I may never earn it. But I'm asking you not to shut me out. Not anymore. Alessia thought about the past 7 years. The loneliness. The struggle. The nights she'd cried herself to sleep wondering if she'd made the right choice. She thought about her children. About Luca's gray eyes, Lucia's stubborn chin. About the way they'd looked at Valerio when they didn't think anyone was watching. With curiosity, with longing, with questions they were afraid to ask. Okay. Valerio blinked. Okay. You can see them. Supervised visits at first. We'll take it slowly. And the legitimization? She looked at the document again. I need time to think about that. Take all the time you need. I will. They sat in silence for another moment and then, Mama. Lucia's voice rang across the garden. Luca says I can't climb the tree but I bet I can. Come watch. Alessia smiled. The first real smile Valerio had seen on her face in 7 years. Duty calls, she said. Can I? He hesitated. Can I come with you? She looked at him for a long moment. Yes, she said finally. You can. The following weeks unfolded like a careful negotiation. Valerio visited every day, at first hovering uncertainly at the edges of his children's lives. He didn't know how to talk to them, didn't know their favorite foods or their bedtime rituals or the particular way Lucia liked her hair braided. But he learned. He learned that Luca was fascinated by airplanes and wanted to be a pilot someday. He learned that Lucia loved painting and had inherited her mother's love of books. He learned that both children talked in their sleep and were afraid of thunderstorms and would eat an entire plate of pasta if no one stopped them. He learned to be present in a way he never had been before. Not commanding, not controlling, just there. Sitting on the floor playing games. Reading bedtime stories with different voices for different characters. Listening when they talked about their day even when the stories were long and rambling and didn't seem to go anywhere. And slowly, so slowly, the walls began to come down. Papa. Valerio looked up from the book he was reading aloud. It was the first time Luca had called him that. Yes. Are you going to stay this time? The question hit like a punch to the chest. What do you mean, Tesoro? I heard Mama talking to Nona. Luca's gray eyes, his eyes, were solemn beyond their years. She said she doesn't know if you can change. She said the world you live in is dangerous and maybe it's better if we don't get too close. Valerio set down the book. Come here. Luca climbed into his lap, small and warm and trusting in a way that felt unearned but miraculous. Your mother is right, Valerio said carefully. The world I live in is dangerous. There are people who would hurt you because of who I am. That's why she kept you safe all these years, because she knew I couldn't protect you the way she could. But now you can. Now I'm going to try. Valerio pulled up his sleeve, showing the crowned lion on his forearm. You see this? It's a symbol of strength and protection. It means I'll fight for the people I love no matter what. Do you love us? More than anything in the world. Even Mama? Valerio's throat tightened. Especially Mama. Then why did you make her sad? Out of the mouths of babes. Because I was stupid, Valerio said honestly. Because I thought being strong meant never needing anyone. Because I was so afraid of losing her that I pushed her away first. That doesn't make sense. No. It doesn't. He pressed a kiss to his son's hair. But I'm trying to make better sense now. I'm trying to be the father you deserve. Do you promise? I promise. Luca considered this for a moment. Then with the simple trust of childhood he nodded. Hey. You can finish the book now. Across the estate Alessia stood in the garden watching through the window. Damiano found her there, a glass of wine in hand. He's good with them, he observed. Better than I expected. And with you. Alessia didn't answer. You're falling for him again, Damiano said not unkindly. I can see it. I never stopped. Then why don't you tell him? Because I don't trust it. She turned to face her mentor. The last time I trusted him I ended up alone and pregnant with no money and no support. The last time I believed in that life, it nearly destroyed me. And now? How I don't know. She looked back at the window where Valerio was making Luca laugh at something. He's different. I can see it. But is he different enough? Is he different permanently? Or is this just another phase? Another mask he'll take off when it suits him? Only time will answer that. I know. Alessia's voice was soft. That's what I'm afraid of. A month passed. The estate transformed from a crime scene to a home. Valerio moved his base of operations closer, reducing travel, delegating more, making himself available in ways he never had before. He ate dinner with his children every night. He learned to braid Lucia's hair, badly at first, but he improved. He attended Luca's school events and sat through interminable recitals and stood in the rain at football practices like any ordinary father. He wasn't ordinary. He would never be ordinary. But he was trying. And Alessia noticed. "You're different," she said one evening after the children had gone to bed. They were sitting on the terrace again, the place where so many of their conversations seemed to happen. Different how? Softer. Less. She searched for the word. Less certain. I used to think certainty was strength. I was wrong. What changed? Everything. He turned to face her. Losing you. Missing the twins. Watching my own wedding fall apart. Standing in that cellar with a gun pointed at my son's head. His voice roughened. I've faced death more times than I can count. But nothing has ever terrified me like that moment. Is that when you decided to change? No. I decided to change the moment I saw you step off that plane. When I realized that you'd built an entire life without me. A successful life, a happy life. And I was the one who had nothing. You had an empire. I had a cage. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. Alessia, I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I've done nothing to earn your trust. But I need you to know, I need you to understand, that you were never the mistake. You were the only right thing I ever did. And losing you was the only thing I've ever truly regretted. She didn't pull away. What are you saying? I'm saying that I love you. I've loved you since the first moment I saw you shelving books in that ridiculous little store, arguing with a customer about whether Tolstoy was overrated. I loved you when you agreed to marry me. I loved you when you left. I loved you every single day of these 7 years, even when I was too proud to admit it. Valerio. I'm not asking for anything. I needed you to know. Whatever happens next, whatever you decide, you deserve to know the truth. You were never a mistake. You were never a burden. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to become someone worthy of you. Alessia looked at him, really looked. At the man who had broken her heart. At the father who was learning to mend it. At the monster who was trying to become human. I don't know if I can trust you again, she said finally. I know. I don't know if I can ever go back to that life. I don't want you to go back. I want to build something new. Something better. How? I don't know. His laugh was soft, self-deprecating. For the first time in my life, I don't have a plan. I just have hope. Hope isn't enough. Then let me earn the rest. Day by day, brick by brick. Let me prove that I can be the man you needed me to be. He thought about it. About the risks, the dangers, the 1,000 ways this could go wrong. She thought about her children, and the way they looked at their father with love they couldn't yet name. She thought about herself and the weight she'd carried for 7 years, and the exhaustion of being strong alone. Okay, she whispered. Valerio's breath caught. Okay. Don't make me repeat myself. But she was smiling. We'll take it slow. We'll be careful. And if you hurt me again, if you hurt them again. I won't. You say that now. I'll say it forever. Every day for the rest of my life if that's what it takes. She looked at him. At his eyes, gray and fierce and full of a tenderness she'd almost forgotten. At his hands, calloused and tattooed and trembling slightly as they reached for hers. At the man she'd once promised forever to. The man she'd run from. The man who was kneeling before her now, not as a don or a boss or a king, but as the father of her children. As the man who loved her. Valerio, she said, her voice thick with tears she refused to shed. I need to tell you something. Anything. I never stopped loving you either. The crash of glass shattered the moment. Valerio was on his feet in an instant, his body between Alessia and the darkness beyond the terrace. Tommaso burst through the door, his face grave. Sir. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Bellaforte is dead. Killed 3 hours ago. Tommaso's eyes flickered to Alessia. And his dying message named you as the murderer. That's impossible. I've been here all evening. I know. But someone wants the world to think otherwise. The ceasefire is broken. The alliance is collapsing. And, he hesitated. And what? There's a price on the twins. Both of them. Someone is trying to restart the war, and they're using your children as the spark. The silence that followed Tommaso's words was absolute. Alessia felt the blood drain from her face. Somewhere above them her children slept peacefully, unaware that the fragile safety she'd built was crumbling around them. Who? Valerio's voice was ice, colder than she'd ever heard it, even in the worst days of their marriage. Who put the price out? We're still tracking the source. But the amount. Tommaso hesitated. 20 million euros. Each. 40 million for 2 children who had done nothing except exist. Get everyone up. Valerio was already moving, his body a weapon in motion. Full security rotation. I want eyes on every entrance, every window, every possible approach. No one sleeps until we know who's behind this. Already done, sir. And the children? Marco's team is with them now. They won't leave that hallway. Alessia found her voice. I need to see them. Alessia. They're my children, Valerio. I need to see them. He looked at her and something softened beneath the ice. I'll take you myself. The nursery, converted from a guest suite when it became clear the twins were staying, was a fortress disguised as a child's room. Alessia had decorated it with their favorite colors. Blue for Luca, yellow for Lucia. Books lined every available surface. Stuffed animals stood guard on pillows. It looked for all the world like a place where nothing bad could ever happen. But 3 armed men stood at the door and another 2 patrolled the hallway, and the windows had been reinforced with bulletproof glass that cost more than most people's houses. Alessia crossed to the beds where her children slept, their small faces peaceful in the dim light. She brushed hair from Luca's forehead. Adjusted Lucia's blanket. And then she turned to face Valerio with fury in her eyes. You promised, she whispered, her voice fierce and quiet so as not to wake them. You promised they would be safe. I know. This is why I left. This is exactly. I know. He didn't defend himself. Didn't make excuses. Just stood there and absorbed her anger like it was nothing more than what he deserved. And I'm going to fix it. How? How do you fix a 40 million euro bounty on children who haven't even finished first grade? By finding out who's responsible and making them regret they were ever born. The cold certainty in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it calmed something frantic in her chest. What do you need me to do? Stay here. Stay with them. Don't leave this room unless I'm personally escorting you. And if someone gets through? He reached beneath his jacket and pulled out a sleek black pistol. Do you remember how to use this? He stared at the weapon. Years ago, before their marriage had crumbled, he taught her to shoot. Just in case, he'd said. Just in case anything ever happened. I remember. He pressed it into her hands. Then don't hesitate. Anyone who comes through that door who isn't me or Tommaso, don't hesitate. Valerio. I will come back. He gripped her shoulders, his tattooed knuckles standing out against her pale skin. I will end this and I will come back and then we will figure out the rest. But right now I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She looked at him, at the man she'd loved, lost, and was terrified to love again. Yes, she said. I can. The next 48 hours were a blur of intelligence reports, security briefings, and barely contained panic. Valerio slept in intervals of 20 minutes when he slept at all. He coordinated with allies, interrogated sources, and slowly, painstakingly, assembled a picture of what had happened. The truth, when it emerged, was almost laughably predictable. Lorenzo Marchetti, Tommaso said, spreading surveillance photos across the conference table. Second cousin to Bianca Vescari. Minor player in the Venetian operations. And what's his connection to Bellaforte's death? Money. Tommaso pulled up financial records. Marchetti was heavily invested in shipping routes that you and Bellaforte controlled. When the two of you declared a ceasefire, those investments became worthless. He lost everything, his business, his status, his family's respect. So he killed Bellaforte and framed me. And put a bounty on your children to ensure the war would restart. Why the twins? Why not me directly? Tommaso's expression was grim. Because hurting you isn't enough. He wants to destroy you. Take everything, your heirs, your legacy, your future. Valerio's hands clenched. The honor e cour tattoos seemed to pulse with suppressed rage. Where is he? We're tracking 3 possible locations. But sir, Tommaso hesitated. He's not alone. He's hired mercenaries. Professional ones. And he has information about your security protocols that he shouldn't have. Someone's feeding him intelligence. It appears so. A traitor. In his own organization. Someone close enough to know his vulnerabilities. Valerio thought about the past 3 months. About the visitors, the staff, the endless parade of people who had access to his home, his family, his children. Start with anyone new, he said. Anyone who arrived in the last 6 months. Anyone whose background wasn't personally verified by you. That's a long list. Then start reading. The break came from an unexpected source. Luciana Castiglione appeared at Valerio's office door at 3 in the morning, her silver hair braided for sleep, her face sharp with decades of accumulated wisdom. Mother, you should be resting. And you should be solving this problem faster. She settled into the chair across from his desk with the authority of a woman who had never needed permission for anything. I have information. What kind of information? The kind I've been keeping for 30 years. She folded her hands. Lorenzo Marchetti's mother was my husband's mistress. Did you know that? Valerio went very still. No. Few do. He was kept quiet, paid off, buried, forgotten. But I never forgot. And I kept records. Records of what? Everything. Financial transfers, property deeds, documents that prove Lorenzo Marchetti is your half-brother. The silence that followed was deafening. He doesn't just want revenge, Luciana continued. He wants what he believes is rightfully his. The name. The empire. The family he was denied because his mother was the wrong woman. Does he know? I believe he's always known. His mother told him before she died. Filled his head with stories of the inheritance that should have been his, the father who abandoned him, the brother who got everything he deserved. Luciana's voice was cold. She forgot to mention that her own choices made her situation possible. Valerio absorbed this. A half-brother. Decades of hidden resentment. A grudge that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with blood. This changes the approach, he said. Yes. It does. He won't be satisfied with money. This is personal. More personal than you know. Luciana leaned forward. He's not just trying to destroy you, Tesoro. He's trying to replace you. Take your children, claim them as his own heirs, present himself as the true Castiglione. That's insane. Is it? The twins are blood. They would give him legitimacy that nothing else could. If they were in his custody, if he could prove himself their guardian. Over my dead body. That, Luciana said quietly, is precisely what he's counting on. Armed with this new understanding, the hunt intensified. Valerio coordinated with families who owed him favors, called in decades of alliances, and slowly tightened a net around Lorenzo Marchetti's hiding places. One by one the mercenaries were eliminated. One by one the safe houses fell. But Marchetti himself remained elusive. He's been trained, Tommaso reported after yet another empty raid. Someone taught him how to disappear. Who? Unknown. But whoever it was knew our methods. He's always one step ahead. The internal investigation had narrowed the traitor to 3 possibilities. A security guard who had access to patrol schedules, a housekeeper who had been present during sensitive conversations, and a driver who transported family members regularly. All 3 were placed under surveillance. All 3 remained maddeningly clean. Until the 4th day. Sir. Marco's voice crackled through the radio. We have a situation. Alessia was reading to the twins when the door burst open. She had the gun in her hand before she registered that it was Marco, his face pale with urgency. Mrs. Castiglione. We need to move. Now. What's happening? Perimeter breach. Multiple entry points. He was already gathering Luca and Lucia, their small faces confused and frightened. There's a helicopter on the roof. Mr. Castiglione's orders. Where is he? Engaging the threat. Please, ma'am, we don't have time. Alessia's heart hammered as she scooped Lucia into her arms. The little girl clung to her neck, whimpering softly. Mama? Are the bad men here? It's going to be okay, Tesoro. I promise. We're just going for a little trip. They moved through the hallways in a tight formation. Marco in front, 2 guards behind, Alessia in the center with both children. The estate that had become something like home was now a war zone, the sound of gunfire echoing from somewhere below. This way. Marco directed them toward a concealed staircase. The helicopter is waiting. They were halfway up when Lucia tugged at Alessia's hand. Mama. I dropped my bunny. The stuffed rabbit, Lucia's constant companion since infancy, was nowhere to be seen. We'll get you a new one, baby. But I need that bunny. Papa gave it to me. Alessia's heart clenched. Valerio had given Lucia the rabbit 2 months ago on her birthday, the first present he'd ever given either of his children. It had become Lucia's most prized possession. I know, Tesoro. But right now we need to. I'll find it. One of the guards broke formation. Keep moving. I'll catch up. Marco nodded and they continued upward. It was the last time any of them would see that guard alive. The rooftop was chaos. Wind whipped from the helicopter blades as Alessia ran toward the open door, children in her arms. A figure emerged from the darkness, tall, lean, with cold green eyes that seemed to glow in the artificial light. Lorenzo Marchetti smiled. Hello, sister-in-law. Marco raised his weapon, but Marchetti was faster. The shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He dropped, and suddenly there was no one between Alessia and the man who wanted to steal her children. Let's not make this difficult. Marchetti's voice was pleasant, conversational. The twins come with me. You get to live. Simple exchange. Alessia's hand found the gun at her hip. Stay back. Or what? You'll shoot me. He laughed. You're a publisher, Alessia. A mother. You don't have it in you. You don't know what I have in me. I know what you're afraid of. I know every secret this family tried to bury. I know that my brother, he spat the word like poison, was so busy building his empire that he let you walk away pregnant. Let you raise his heirs alone while he played God with everyone else's lives. That's between us. No. That's between me and the family that pretended I didn't exist. He stepped closer. I was supposed to have all this. The name, the power, the legacy. Our father chose your husband's mother because she was respectable, but he loved mine. And I was the firstborn. I should have been the heir. You weren't. Because of an accident of marriage. Because of paperwork and tradition and all the lies powerful men tell themselves. His eyes dropped to the twins who were crying silently in Alessia's arms. But these children, they're legitimate. They're blood. And if I raise them, shape them, make them mine, they will never be yours. They won't have a choice. He raised his weapon. And a shot rang out from behind him. Lorenzo Marchetti stumbled, confusion crossing his face as blood blossomed across his chest. He turned slowly to find Valerio standing at the rooftop access door, gun still raised, face carved from stone. Brother. Marchetti's smile was grotesque. You finally found me. I found you. Valerio walked closer, each step deliberate. And I'm going to do what should have been done years ago. Kill me. Like you killed our father's memory? Like you killed any chance I had at the life I deserved. Our father abandoned you because he was a coward. Not because you weren't worthy. Valerio stopped an arm's length away. But that doesn't give you the right to threaten my family. Your family? Those children are mine as much as they are yours. They're Castiglione blood. They're my children. My wife's children. And you will never touch them. Your wife left you. She left me because I was becoming you. The words came out broken. Cold. Vengeful. So focused on power that I forgot what mattered. But I'm not that man anymore. And I will never be that man again. Marchetti swayed. The wound was fatal, they both knew it. But dying men can still be dangerous. Then we're both ghosts, he whispered. Haunting a family that never wanted us. No. Valerio's voice was steady. You're the ghost. I'm going home. He turned his back on his half-brother and walked toward his family. Behind him, Lorenzo Marchetti collapsed. He never got up. The aftermath was handled with the quiet efficiency that characterized the Castiglione organization at its best. Bodies were removed. Stories were crafted. The official narrative, a business dispute that escalated beyond control, satisfied the authorities and the press. The truth was buried beneath layers of money and influence. But some truths couldn't be buried. Valerio found Alessia in the children's room watching them sleep. They'd been given something to help them rest. A mild sedative approved by the family physician, and their small faces were finally peaceful. "I should have protected them better," Valerio said from the doorway. "You saved them. I put them in danger. Lorenzo Marchetti put them in danger. Your father's choices put them in danger. None of this was your fault. Wasn't it?" He crossed to stand beside her, looking down at his children. "If I had been a different man, if I had treated you better, kept you close, been the husband you needed, then we would have been here when Marchetti came looking. All three of us." Alessia's voice was gentle. "I kept them safe for 6 years because I was far away from all this. But I couldn't have protected them forever. Eventually, the truth would have found us. And now they have a father who will burn the world to keep them safe." She turned to face him. "That's what you said, isn't it? You would burn the world." "I meant it. I know you did." She reached up, touched his face. "That's why I'm staying." Valerio went very still. "Staying here with you, with the family." Her smile was small but real. "I spent 7 years running from your world. But tonight I realized, it's not the world that's the problem. It's how we navigate it. And I'd rather navigate it together than face it alone." "Alessia, I'm not saying it will be easy. We have years of pain to work through. Trust to rebuild. A whole life to figure out. Whatever it takes." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like he never intended to let go. "Whatever it takes for however long it takes. I will be worthy of you. Of them. I swear it." "Don't swear." She pressed her face into his chest. "Just show me. Every day. For the rest of my life." 6 months later. The garden at the Castiglione estate had never looked more beautiful. Not 10,000 white roses or crystal chandeliers or designer everything. Just simple elegance. Olive branches and wildflowers. Soft music from a string quartet. Family and closest friends, no political alliances or power plays. Alessia stood at one end of the aisle wearing a dress she'd chosen herself. Ivory silk, simple cut, nothing like the grand gowns Bianca Vescari had commissioned for a wedding that never happened. Luca walked beside her, carrying the rings on a velvet pillow, his gray eyes solemn with the importance of his task. Lucia walked ahead, scattering flower petals with the enthusiasm of a child who had been told this was the most important job in the world. And at the altar Valerio waited. He wore a dark suit, simple and elegant. His tattoos were visible. The script on his neck, the lion on his forearm, the cathedral and olive branches, the words across his knuckles. He hadn't tried to hide them. They were part of who he was. But so was the man who had learned to change. "You're sure about this?" Luciana asked quietly, seated in the front row. Alessia smiled. "I've never been more sure of anything." She walked down the aisle toward the man she'd loved, lost and chosen again. Toward the father of her children. Toward a future she'd never imagined possible. When she reached him, Valerio took her hands in his. "Hi," he whispered. "Hi. You look beautiful. You look terrified." "I am." His laugh was soft, vulnerable, utterly unlike the man he'd once been. "I'm terrified that I'll wake up and this will all be a dream. That you'll realize you deserve better and leave again. That I'll somehow ruin this perfect thing." "You might. Alessia. But I'll stay anyway." She squeezed his hands. "Because love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up. Every day. Even when it's hard. Even when we fail. We show up anyway. I can do that. I know you can." The officiant cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony was short, the vows simple. "I promise to love you. To protect you. To choose you every single day for the rest of my life. I promise to trust you. To forgive you. To grow old with you even when growing is painful. I promise to be the parent our children deserve. To build a family where love is louder than fear." When Valerio kissed her, the small crowd erupted in cheers. Luca and Lucia rushed forward, demanding to be included, and suddenly it wasn't a kiss between two people but a group embrace. Mother, father, children tangled together in the warm afternoon light. "We're a real family now," Lucia announced. "Like in the storybooks." "Better than storybooks," Valerio said, lifting her onto his hip. Tesoro, we're going to have adventures that would make any storybook jealous. Promise. I promise. Luca tugged at his other hand. Papa, does this mean you're staying forever? Valerio looked at Alessia. At the children. At the life he'd almost lost and somehow managed to save. Forever, he said. And maybe even longer than that. That evening, after the celebration had wound down and the guests had departed, the family gathered on the terrace. The same terrace where so many of their important conversations had happened. The same view of the gardens and the distant hills and the Italian sky turning pink and gold with sunset. Luca and Lucia were draped across their parents, exhausted from the excitement, too tired to do anything but exist in the warmth of belonging. I never thought I'd have this, Valerio said quietly. Have what? Peace. He pressed a kiss to the top of Lucia's head. I spent my whole life fighting. Building walls. Protecting myself from feelings I thought would make me weak. And I missed this. What changed? You came back. He turned to look at her. You stepped off that plane with our children and I realized, everything I thought mattered didn't matter at all. The power, the empire, the respect. None of it meant anything if I didn't have you. We didn't come back for you, Alessia reminded him gently. We came for closure. I know. But I like to think. He smiled. I like to think some part of you was hoping I'd fight for you. Hoping I'd finally become the man you needed. Maybe. She leaned into his shoulder. Maybe some part of me never stopped waiting. Then I'm glad I didn't disappoint. You almost did. Several times. I know. But you didn't. She turned her face up to his. You kept trying. Even when I pushed you away. Even when I made it impossible. You kept showing up. Always. He kissed her forehead. For the rest of my life. Always. 1 year later. The Castiglione estate had become a different place. Not less powerful. Valerio still commanded respect, still maintained the empire his family had built over generations. But the cold edge was gone. The fear that had once surrounded his name had transformed into something else. Something closer to awe. Because the most feared man in southern Italy was also a devoted husband. A patient father. A man who left business meetings to attend school plays and who could be found every Sunday afternoon teaching his children to cook traditional Italian recipes in a kitchen that had never been designed for family gatherings. You're getting flour everywhere, Alessia said, laughing as Luca attempted to knead pizza dough with more enthusiasm than technique. That's the best part, Valerio insisted. The mess is half the fun. Says the man who has staff to clean it up. Says the man who intends to clean this one up himself. He caught her around the waist, pulling her close despite the flour coating his hands. Every mess. Every time. For the rest of our lives. You're getting flour on my dress. You look beautiful in flour. You're impossible. And you love me anyway. She kissed him soft and quick because the children were watching and making disgusted faces and their family was whole in a way it had never been before. I do, she said. God help me, I really do. Later that evening, after the pizza had been made, lopsided but delicious, and eaten enthusiastically with much debate about toppings, and the children had been bathed with difficulty, and put to bed with stories and songs and promises of adventures tomorrow, Valerio and Alessia stood on the terrace one more time. The stars were bright over Tuscany. The air smelled of olive trees and lavender and home. I have something for you, Valerio said. Another gift. You've given me everything I could possibly. Not everything. He pulled a small box from his pocket. This was my grandmother's. And her grandmother's before that. It's been in the family for 6 generations. Alessia opened the box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a ring. Not her wedding ring but something older, simpler. A thin gold band set with a single ruby, surrounded by tiny diamonds that caught the starlight. It's the Castiglione family ring, Valerio explained. Given to the matriarch of each generation. My mother wore it for 40 years. Now it's yours. Valerio. You're the heart of this family, Alessia. You always have been even when you were far away. You taught me how to be a husband. A father. A man. Everything I am now. Everything worth being. I learned from loving you. Tears slipped down her cheeks as he slid the ring onto her finger. I don't deserve this. You deserve this and more. He cupped her face in his hands. You deserve a world where I never made you cry. Where I was there for every moment, every milestone, every ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I can't give you that world. But I can give you every single day from now until forever. 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 He kissed her, long and slow and full of 7 years of longing finally laid to rest. And maybe even longer than that. Far across the estate, Luciana Castiglione watched from her window. Her son and daughter-in-law, wrapped in each other's arms. Her grandchildren, sleeping peacefully in rooms decorated with their favorite colors. A family restored. A legacy secured. She smiled, touched the old photograph of her late husband that sat on her nightstand and whispered, "They made it, Caro. Despite everything, they made it." Then she closed her curtains and went to sleep. Outside, the stars kept their silent vigil over the Castiglione estate. Over a family that had been broken and rebuilt. Over a love that had been lost and found. Over 2 children with their father's gray eyes, dreaming of adventures and pizza and all the ordinary miracles that made up a life worth living. And over a man who had finally learned the truth his grandmother's tattoo had always proclaimed. La famiglia prima di tutto. Family above everything. Not as a weapon. Not as a shield. But as a promise. A promise he intended to keep for the rest of his life. 5 years later. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows of the Castiglione estate, casting golden patterns across the breakfast table where chaos reigned supreme. Luca, now 11, was arguing passionately about the historical inaccuracies in his favorite television show. Lucia, equally 11 and equally passionate, was countering every point with her own theories about artistic license. Between them, a small figure with dark curls and her mother's hazel eyes was methodically dismantling a croissant into approximately 47 pieces. "Sophia," Alessia said gently, "we eat our food. We don't perform surgery on it." 3-year-old Sophia Castiglione looked up at her mother with an expression of profound innocence. "I'm making it into art, Mama. Your father's influence, clearly." "I heard that." Valerio appeared in the doorway, adjusting his cufflinks. Still tailored suits, still the crowned lion visible on his forearm when his sleeves shifted, but somehow softer now. Less armor, more uniform. "And for the record, I have never once performed surgery on a croissant. You reorganize your breakfast plate into symmetrical patterns. That's different. That's aesthetic appreciation." "Papa's weird," Lucia announced cheerfully. "Papa's distinguished," Valerio corrected, dropping a kiss on her head as he passed. Then Luca's head. Then Sophia's, which required careful navigation around the croissant debris field. Finally, he reached Alessia, and the kiss he gave her was longer, softer, the kind of kiss that still made her heart flutter after all these years. "Get a room," Luca groaned. "We have several," Valerio replied without missing a beat. "This happens to be the breakfast room. You know what I meant. I know you're 11 and easily embarrassed by parental affection. Consider it character building." Tommaso appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "Sir, the morning briefing is ready." "The morning briefing can wait 5 minutes." Valerio settled into his chair, reaching for the coffee Alessia had already poured. "What's everyone's plan for today?" The question, ordinary, domestic, utterly unremarkable, would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Valerio Castiglione, asking about school projects and playdates over breakfast, as if he weren't still one of the most powerful men in Italy. But power, he had learned, came in many forms. "Football practice," Luca said. "And Marco is taking me to see the new aviation museum after." "Art class," Lucia added. "We're learning oil paints this week. The instructor says I have real talent." "You do," Alessia confirmed. "Your grandmother has been asking when she can commission a family portrait." "Sophia gets to come to the office with me," the youngest announced proudly. "Papa promised." Valerio's eyes crinkled. "Papa did promise. We have very important business to discuss." "What business?" Alessia asked suspiciously. "Top secret. Highly classified. May involve the ice cream shop that happens to be near headquarters." "I knew it. You're just jealous you weren't invited. I have a publishing house to run. Some of us work for a living." The banter was easy, familiar, woven through with a decade of rebuilding and 2 more children, Sophia and the baby currently making Alessia's back ache, due in 3 months, and all the ordinary chaos of a family that had chosen each other again and again. Tommaso cleared his throat. Sir, the briefing. 5 more minutes, Tommaso. The delegation from Milan will wait for me as they always do. Valerio's voice carried just enough steel to remind everyone that soft didn't mean weak. I'm having breakfast with my family. Tommaso nodded, the ghost of a smile crossing his scarred face, and retreated to wait in the hallway. Later in the car, Sophia sat in her specially designed car seat, clutching a stuffed rabbit that was the direct descendant of Lucia's beloved bunny, lost that terrible night years ago and replaced with 3 different rabbits before this one finally stuck. Papa. Yes, Tesoro? Why do those men follow us everywhere? She meant the security detail, ever-present, carefully trained, as much a part of their lives as breathing. The twins had grown up with it, accepted it as normal. Sophia was just beginning to ask questions. Because they help Papa keep you safe. Safe from what? Valerio considered his answer carefully. 3 was young, too young for the full truth. But he had promised Alessia years ago that their children would never be blindsided by their family's reality. That honesty in age-appropriate doses was better than sudden revelation. Some people don't like Papa very much, he said finally, because of the work Papa does. So these men make sure those people can't bother us. Bad people. Sometimes. But mostly just people who make different choices. And Papa wants you to always be safe no matter what. Sophia absorbed this with the gravity that only a 3-year-old could muster. Marco says you're the most powerful man in Italy. Marco talks too much. Is it true? It's complicated. He caught her eyes in the rearview mirror. Power isn't just about being strong, Tesoro. It's about protecting the people you love. About making good choices even when they're hard. About being kind and fair even when you could be cruel. Like in the stories Mama reads? Exactly like that. Are you the hero or the king? I try to be both. I don't always succeed. He smiled at her reflection. But I have you and your brother and sisters to remind me how to be better. Sophia nodded, satisfied with this answer, and returned her attention to her rabbit. Valerio returned his attention to the road, to the security vehicles that flanked them, to the weight of responsibility that never quite lifted, but that he'd learned to carry differently now. Not alone. Never alone again. At the estate, Luciana Castiglione was holding court. At 74 she remained formidable. Silver hair immaculate, posture perfect, eyes sharp enough to dissect a politician's speech from 30 paces. The garden party she'd organized for her charity foundation was in full swing, with carefully selected guests mingling among the roses she personally tended. Alessia found her in the afternoon, strategically positioned where she could observe everything while appearing to observe nothing. You should be resting, Luciana said, eyeing Alessia's pregnant belly. The doctors said light activity is fine. This is light activity. This is social warfare disguised as philanthropy. Nothing light about it. Alessia laughed and settled into the chair beside her mother-in-law. Their relationship had transformed over the years, from mutual wariness to grudging respect to something that felt very much like genuine affection. I saw Sophia's latest drawings, Luciana said. She has her sister's gift. She has her grandmother's stubbornness. I prefer to call it determination. You would. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the guests circulate. Politicians and business leaders and carefully vetted allies. The social ecosystem of power that Luciana had navigated for half a century. You've changed him, Luciana said finally. Who? My son. Luciana's voice was soft. I spent 40 years watching him build walls. Watching him become harder, colder, more like his father than I wanted to admit. And then you left and I thought, she paused. I thought he would become something monstrous. Without you to anchor him, I thought he would lose himself entirely. He almost did. Yes. But then you came back. And you gave him something I couldn't, a reason to be better. Not for power or legacy or the family name. Just better. For its own sake. He did the work himself. He did. But you made him want to. Luciana reached over, squeezed Alessia's hand. I never properly thanked you for that. You don't need to thank me. I do. Because you didn't just save my son. You saved my grandchildren. My legacy. My family. Her eyes were bright with tears she was too proud to shed. You saved everything that matters. Alessia squeezed back. That's what family does. Evening fell soft and golden over Tuscany. The charity guests departed. The children were fed, bathed, and settled into their respective evening activities. Luca with his flight simulator, Lucia with her easel, Sophia with a picture book in her mother's lap. Valerio found them in the library, Sophia drowsing against Alessia's shoulder, the picture book fallen open to an illustration of a prince and princess in a rose garden. She fought sleep for an hour, Alessia whispered. Finally lost the battle. She gets that from you. I do not fight sleep. You absolutely fight sleep. You're fighting it right now. I'm pregnant. I'm allowed to be tired. You're allowed to rest. He crossed the room, lifted Sophia from her arms with practiced ease. The little girl murmured something unintelligible and burrowed into his shoulder. I'll put her down. You stay here. Valerio. I'll be back. We can be tired together. He carried his youngest daughter through the hallways of their home, past the portraits of ancestors who had built this empire with blood and steel, past the modern additions that spoke of a different kind of strength, to the nursery that had housed Luca and Lucia once and now held their baby sister. He laid Sophia in her bed, tucked the rabbit beside her, pressed a kiss to her forehead. I love you, Tesoro, he whispered. To the moon and back and around again. She smiled in her sleep. Valerio stood there for a moment longer, watching her breathe, watching the peaceful rise and fall of her small chest, watching the miracle he still couldn't quite believe was his. Then he checked on Luca, absorbed in his simulator, barely acknowledging his father's presence but accepting the hand on his shoulder with a lean that said more than words. And Lucia, brush in hand, painting something that looked like the garden at sunset, her concentration absolute. It's beautiful, he told her. It's not finished. The best things never are. She looked up at him, her gray eyes, his eyes, thoughtful beyond her years. Papa, do you ever regret how things happened? What do you mean? The divorce. The years you weren't there. Everything Mama went through alone. She set down her brush. Do you ever wish you could change it? Valerio considered the question carefully. His daughter deserved an honest answer. Every day, he admitted. I wish I had been a better man sooner. I wish your mother hadn't had to struggle. I wish I hadn't missed your first steps, your first words, your first everything. He crouched beside her chair. But I also know that wishing doesn't change anything. All I can do is be here now. Be better now. And hope that the years we have together will outweigh the years we lost. Do you think they will? I think, he smiled. I think that's not for me to decide. That's for you, for Luca, for your mother. Whether my being here now makes up for not being there then. Lucia was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and wrapped her arms around his neck. It does, she whispered. It already does. Valerio held his daughter, his throat tight with emotions he had spent half a lifetime learning to feel. Thank you, Tesoro. I love you, Papa. I love you too. More than you'll ever know. He found Alessia still in the library, but she'd moved to the window seat, looking out at the gardens where fairy lights had been strung for the party and not yet taken down. The children are settled, he said, joining her. All three of them? All three. Though Luca barely acknowledged my existence. Apparently his virtual aircraft required his complete attention. He's 11. We're lucky he acknowledges anyone's existence. Valerio settled beside her, pulled her against him so her back rested against his chest and his hand could rest on her belly, where their fourth child, their third miracle, waited to join the world. What are you thinking about? He asked. Lucia asked me something today, while you were at work. What? She asked if I was happy. Not content. Not okay. Happy. What did you tell her? Alessia was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the back of his hand. I told her yes, she said finally. For the first time in as long as I can remember, I told her yes. Valerio pressed his face into her hair. I don't deserve you. Probably not. I don't deserve any of this. The children. This life. You. Definitely not. And yet here we are. Here we are. She turned in his arms, facing him. The fairy lights caught the gold in her eyes, the silver that had started to thread through her dark hair, signs of time passing, of life lived fully. Valerio Castiglione, reformed Mafia boss, devoted father, competent croissant surgeon. I told you I don't. Shoo. She pressed a finger to his lips. I'm giving you compliments. Accept them graciously. Yes, ma'am. Better. She replaced her finger with her lips, kissing him softly. You changed. Against all odds, against all expectations, against everything anyone who knew you would have predicted, you changed. You made me want to. I gave you a reason. You did the work. Then we changed together. We did. She settled against him again, watching the fairy lights twinkle in the garden below. And we're still changing. Every day. That's how it works, isn't it? Growth doesn't stop. It just evolves. I think I read that on a motivational poster once. Don't ruin the moment. Wouldn't dream of it. They sat in comfortable silence, wrapped in each other, while the Tuscan night settled soft and peaceful around them. Valerio. Thank you. For what? For sending that invitation. The wedding one 12 years ago. He laughed, surprised, genuine. That invitation was the height of arrogance. I was trying to hurt you. I know. But if you hadn't sent it, you wouldn't have come. I wouldn't have come, she agreed. And you never would have known about the twins. And we never would have found our way back to each other. So my worst impulse led to my greatest gift. Something like that. She twisted to look at him. I spent years being angry about that invitation. About everything it represented. But now I just feel grateful. Grateful for my arrogance. Grateful for second chances. She cupped his face in her hands, studying him with the intensity she'd once reserved for manuscripts she was considering publishing. We broke everything, Valerio. Our marriage, our trust, our family. We shattered it into a million pieces. And then somehow we built something better from the wreckage. Not somehow. Together. Together, she agreed. And that's what I'm grateful for. The together part. Because I spent 7 years doing it alone and I was good at it. I survived, I built a life, I raised our children. But this is better. This with you is so much better. Even with the security details. The business obligations. The mother-in-law who organizes charity events as social warfare. Even with all of that. She smiled. Because the alternative is a world without you. And I tried that world. Was smaller. Quieter. Safer maybe. But smaller. I love you, he said. The words came easier now than they once had. Practice perhaps. Or just the knowledge that saying them would never cost him anything again. I love you too. He kissed him longer this time, deeper. Now take me to bed. I'm exhausted, I'm pregnant, and if I fall asleep in this window seat, you're going to have to carry me. I could carry you. Your back would disagree. My back is fine. Your back complained for 3 days after you carried Sophia from the car to the house last week. She was asleep. I was being careful. You were being stubborn. Alessia stood, stretched, extended a hand. Come on. Bed. Sleep. Tomorrow is another day of chaos and children and all the beautiful mess we've made together. Valerio took her hand and followed her toward their bedroom. The room they'd shared for a decade now, through reconciliation and rebuilding and 2 more children and countless ordinary moments that added up to an extraordinary life. At the doorway he paused. Alessia. If you had to do it again, all of it, the leaving, the years alone, the raising the twins by yourself, would you? She considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. I would have told you about the pregnancy, she said finally. I would have given you the chance to choose. But otherwise. She shook her head. I don't know. Those years made me who I am. They made me strong enough to come back. To face you. To demand better instead of accepting less. So you don't regret them? I regret the pain. I regret what our children missed. But I don't regret becoming the woman I needed to be. She searched his face. Do you regret them? Every single day. His voice was raw. But I also know that I wouldn't have been ready, not before. I would have tried to control you. Keep you in a cage. Make you smaller so I could feel bigger. He took a breath. The man I was when you left couldn't have been the husband you needed. Or the father our children deserved. I had to break too so I could rebuild. Then maybe it all happened exactly as it was supposed to. Maybe. Not every love story is neat and clean, Valerio. Some of them take the long way around. Ours certainly did. But we got here. He squeezed his hand. That's what matters. We got here. And they had. through heartbreak and healing, through secrets and revelations, through one wedding that never happened and another that changed everything, through danger and rescue and slow, patient rebuilding, through children who asked hard questions and grandmothers who held court and morning briefings that could wait 5 more minutes. Through all of it, they had found their way back. To each other. To family. To home. And they lived not happily ever after, because life was never that simple, and the Castiglione family's story would continue to evolve through challenges and triumphs and ordinary Tuesdays. But fully. They lived fully. Together. Forever. And maybe even longer than that.